Hello everyone. I welcome you all to the second day of the Champ Summer School. Today's first lecture will be given by Professor Roberta de Alessandro. Roberta is a professor of linguistics and head of the linguistics section at Utrecht University, Netherlands. Her work spans syntax and language variation, particularly within Italo-Romance dialects, heritage language syntax, agreement phenomena, and syntactic change in contact. I look forward, as we all do, to her lecture today. So over to you, Roberta, and I hope we all have a good session today.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So first of all, thank you for the invitation. I'm very happy and honored to be able to teach in this summer school, especially because I'm pretty new to this field, to honorificity in particular, which is what I will talk about today. Unlike my esteemed colleagues who have been working on it for quite a while. I'm actually looking forward to some interaction, especially because I want to hear your viewpoint. So I'm going to teach the class more or less, but and some things will be a bit vague because I've seen that the background is a little bit varied. Not everybody has the same background. But one thing I would like to ask you is please interrupt me. So do ask questions. Madhusmita is going to monitor the chat. I cannot see very well in the chat screen, so you just feel free to unmute yourself and say, "Hey, I have a question," or Madhusmita to say, "Roberta, there's a question." It is okay. I mean, I wouldn't want you to fall asleep. It's 2 hours. It is, I don't know, it's morning for some of you, so less likely that you fall asleep. For some people, it's the end of the day. So it is just feel free to interrupt, to ask questions, etc. If the question takes too long and there's too much background to be given, we can discuss it at the end of the class. But let's try to be everybody on board. Okay, and those of you who know what I'm talking about, just pretend you don't. And don't, like Martina, please forgive every imprecisions, etc. You'll hear much more tomorrow. Okay, let me see, try and share the screen. And you please tell me if it works. Is it fine?
Yeah, it works.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so like when Britta asked me to give a class in this summer school, I thought, well, I don't really know what to tell you because I've been working on honorificity in the last 2 or 3 years, but on systems, in honorificity in systems that are not honorific marking. In other words, these languages do not have specific honorific markers or very complicated honorificity systems, excuse me, such as the ones that you've heard yesterday, for instance, from Prita or from Shigeru. These languages that I'll tell you about recycle some other material to express some sort of honorificity or politeness. I will also tell you a little bit about politeness. They're not the same, as you know. They are pretty similar concepts, but they are not the same. So we will look at these things. Excuse me. So the languages I will be concerned with today are these ones. The ones you know them possibly all except for Abruzzese. Abruzzese I will mention very briefly. That's an Upper South and Italo-Romance language spoken in Italy. It is not Italian. It is another language. It is a sister of Italian, and it is my mother tongue. So you will hear just a couple of sentences for explanation, and the rest is languages you have heard of. I'm sorry. There's something wrong with throat. Okay. So now, before we go, I thought I will give you my favorite quote from Benveniste. Benveniste was a famous linguist from last century, and he worked a lot on Proac. He worked on many things. He was a famous linguist who most linguists know for his assertion, third person is no person. these are some quotes around this third person is no person, but actually, when you go and read what he wrote, there is a much more fine-grained distinction, and there's a much more articulated thought about what sort of what is a pronoun and what it indicates. So Baumanis tells us that if you think about pronouns, which will be our main concern today, if you look at pronouns, they do not constitute a unitary class, but they are of different types, depending on the mode of language in which they are signs. Okay, this is a kind of old-fashioned terminology for linguistics. Important. Some pronouns belong to the syntax of a language. Others are characteristics of what we shall call instances of discourse, which is not the same as syntax. So we can conflate them. There are models to conflate them. The expression of the discourse participants, which is the speaker, for instance, or the addressee, conflated with, and we will return to this, first person singular that are syntactic elements. They're called features. These are the different thing than speaker and addressee conceptually, ontologically. They're to be separated. That is the discrete and always unique acts by which the language is actualized in speech by speaker. Okay, this is one. Second point is, this is a quote in French. Is there a French speaker among you all? Is there anybody who speaks French properly, meaning? No?
Well, I do, but I'm not a native speaker.
Well, can you read this? I'm sure if you speak French, you'll read it better than me.
Okay, I'll try. Il faut voir que la définition ordinaire des pronoms personnels comme contenant les trois termes je, tu, il y abolit justement la notion de personne. Celle-ci est propre seulement à je, tu et fait de fait dans il.
Perfect. Was this Youssef?
Yeah, that was me.
Thank you so much. This is perfect. It sounds perfect. So much better than it would have sounded if I read it. And it is also, you need to hear the language. We're linguists. English is not the only language in the world. We use it, but there's other languages out there. What is Bonvin saying? Here he is saying person needs to be abolished justly, rightly. The notion of person, to say first person, second person, third person, this is a traditional notion for pronouns. We all study, when we study grammar, we study first, second, and third, singular, and first, second, and third, plural. And that's how we classify things. So we talk about person. And as we predicate person of all three. But actually, what we want, what Bonvenis tells us is person is only I and you. Third person, and this is what we often consider to be his main contribution to the discussion. Third person does not apply to person. Third person is it's not present. The third person is not present in the conversation. So if you think of discourse, you have first person, you have the speaker, you have the addressee, but the person is someone else, is something else. It is not person. That's what he's saying. And lastly, so in some, let me see, why doesn't it go further? And then the definition, now you disappeared. Whoa. Wait a second, because I don't see you anymore now. And I don't see the screen anymore. I don't know what I did. Wait, bear with me 1 second. Sorry. This is my calendar. That is of no interest for you. But I don't know. Can I unshare and share again? Because I hope. Sorry about this, but this has disappeared. I don't know what the Zoom screen has disappeared. Hey, people, sorry about this. I can try and do everything in the small screen, My problem is I don't really see very well in the small screen, so I have to look at the bigger screen. But perhaps the best is just to do it here, and that's it. But I just see Youssef now, the name at least, nothing else. What do I do? Madhusmitan, do you have a tip?
Hi, can you hear me, Roberta?
Yes, I can.
Yes, so you don't have the share screen option anymore? Is that the case?
No, I only have you now.
Um,
I don't know what I pushed. I was trying to go forward. Shall I
is there
just,
an
and I
option?
no longer see, shall I go out and in Zoom again? Because I see there's two.
Yeah.
It
Maybe
tells
you
me that
ping
there are
the
two.
only one.
Sorry?
Maybe you ping the only one screen and like you
Yes.
need to shift to the other.
So do
Let
you
me
have the
see.
option to change your view for Zoom on the top right corner?
Let me see. Okay, now I have it. I have it. It is back. It was frozen for some reason. I'm so sorry about this. So now you should be able to see the screen
Yes.
again.
Yes, but
Do
it's
you
not
see
in full
it?
screen yet. Yes, now it's perfect.
Now it's okay. Sorry about this. I was trying to go further with the slides. I have to do it by hand because it got frozen. Please, guys, take care of your eyes. Okay. Speaker, addressee, first person, second person, there's two different notions. They can be conflated. So now this is really important because we're going to have to think in terms of not specifically immediately, but we have to think in terms of the composition of several parts. So we will get back to it in case we have time because it is not clear that we finish everything. But I want you to keep in mind the general framework. The definition can now be stated precisely as I is the individual in flesh and bones who utters the present instance of discourse, the speaker, containing the linguistic syntactic instance I, first person. So I hope this is, you can see what this means. It is, I is a syntactic notion. First person is a syntactic notion. Speaker is a discourse notion. And I am the referent. These things need to be, these are three different things. And we often conflate them. But if we conflate them, then we risk missing out on generalizations. So I want you to think in these terms all the time while we're talking and while we're discussing this stuff. Okay. Now, how do you get from an instance of I, so we forget now for the moment about the reference, and how do we get from the I syntax to the participant or the discourse? Well, this is an old picture that I took from a book that I wrote in 2007, so 20 years ago. And this was a way to derive the fact that impersonal C sometimes refers to a plurality of individuals in the discourse. So one thing you do is you link, and you've heard this yesterday, you've heard this before, you link the pronoun to the left periphery, to the left part of the structure, the syntactic spine, where you have the codification of the participants, of the speaker, of the addressee, etc. Now, there's a billion different ways to implement this concept. And several people use several different ideas, but the general idea is that more or less always that the core components of a sentence, like the verb phrase, and its inflection, etc., are within the TP. And above the TP, there is information related to the speech act, to the participants, and etc. Now, I will be using, for this first part at least, the interactional spine hypothesis. Now, what is unfortunate here is that we'll hear Martina's class tomorrow. So you will know all the foundations for this in detail, and the why and the therefore and the why she came to this idea and all the justifications, etc. tomorrow. For today, I just want you to consider the basic structure and the basic intuitions. And we will use this one because it's so beautiful even. So, well, this I've stolen from her, as you can see. So 2025 was a talk that she gave 2 weeks ago, and I was there, and it is so clearly visible that I thought, okay, this is very beautiful. The image is beautiful. It is Martina. The concept, we will use this interactional spine hypothesis. Now, the concept that Martina Vilchko developed is a little bit different than the usual. There is a speaker and there is an addressee projection or head in the left periphery. It is more about several parts or domains in syntax encoding different pieces of information that have to do with the interaction in discourse. So it is not simply, oh, there's a speaker there and I link to the speaker. There is much more. You will hear much more. But we will use this kind of system, and especially the third one, the derived interactional honorificity, to get an idea of some phenomena in language and what happens. So this is a bit of the background, and just to show you what kind of tools I'll be using. And now we go to the data. Okay. So then the basic idea of the other two you will forget until tomorrow. This basic idea here is that you have a pronoun, and in order to get to the link, you have the pronoun getting into some contact or some link or some reference in contact. So inheriting or getting a derived meaning or a derived kind of referent, as we said, so the discourse part, by linking to ground. Now, what is this ground? The ground you'll hear more about tomorrow, but basically it is like we have the speaker and the addressee have some sort of different mental worlds, and they need to converge, to merge, and the part that we share, that's our common ground. So the concept is not simply I link to this and this gives me the reference. The concept is like I refer to a shared common ground, which is encoded in the part which is immediately above the verb phrase and so the lower left periphery, and the higher one is dedicated to shift and turn taking, and we will not consider that. Now, one intuition that also Martina put forward is that politeness. What is this politeness? One thing, one way of expressing politeness that we have all considered, this is all the same and all the same. But what one thing, so this central picture that you see here with this line in the middle, so this is telling you I am the addressee and I want to, so the addressee, the you, addressee is you, second person. I want to direct it to the addressee. So we shared that it is you I'm talking to. Now, if you think about it, one of the possible strategies, as you've heard, of politeness is to put some distance, so I am going to talk to you right in front of me, but I use, for instance, a third person or a plurality, or as we will see, the future, everything moving you far from really the direct correspondence between you person, syntactic person, and you, the addressee, right in front of me. So what do you do if you want to establish distance? Well, one thing you can do is you can sever the contact between the syntactic person and the addressee. You can say, well, but you are not the addressee. I'm talking to your majesty. It's someone else, not right you, because it is, I'm establishing distance for deference, for being polite. Now, how do you do this? Well, I mean, you need to know much more about the whole system that's been developed in the last so many years by Vilchko again. But one idea is to say, well, imagine, so this coin that you see here, this is not coins, money. This is coincidence, which means is the second person, for instance, syntax coincident with my addressee? these functional heads are heads that establish the, let's say, the overlap between some heads and some specifiers, more or less. So what you need to think about is, if you say plus coincidence, you coincides with my addressee. If you, that's the simple way to see this. If you say, well, minus coincidence, the addressee, you, I can say you, but I'm talking about, so my pronoun means something else. Now, the aggravation of all this is that you usually don't use you, because if you use you, second person, it's going to be more difficult to create this. So what you're going to have to do is you normally select one pronoun from your inventory, and you say, well, this is not coincident with my addressee, but it is somehow coincident. So I know that I'm referring to my interlocutor, but it is not coincident. I'm referring to my interlocutor with a third person, for instance, to put it outside of my direct common ground, if I may say so. So what I want you to think in terms of basic intuitions for this, and I will be corrected happily tomorrow, but I only just want to use this system without going too much in details to tell you we're going to use strategies to take some pronouns, link them to the left periphery in such a way that you create some sort of, you establish that you are referring to your addressee, but you are not saying, well, this pronoun is not really coincidence to the second person singular in front of you, to the addressee. It is a third person. And what I want to show you is that there are a lot of strategies to do this in several languages. Now, so restrict the access. This is exactly what I just tried to tell you. You restrict the access to the addressee ground. You say, well, you don't access the addressee. One way is to, for instance, avoid the pronouns completely, like they do in Japanese. If you explicitly mention a pronoun, utter a pronoun, that is considered to be less polite. You don't consider this, so you're not going into the addressee ground directly. Or you're using a pronoun which is a third-person pronoun, so that you don't really refer to your addressee right in front of you. This is a way of keeping the difference, the distance, okay? Now, so we will be using this. One important thing is, because this is not what the core is going to be, and this is a spoiler alert. What I want to show you is that doing all this is not computationally light. So if you have a simple system whereby you take a pronoun and you block the access to the direct addressee by using some sort of strategies, using a third person singular, using a second person plural, all sorts of strategies that don't say you directly because that's rude, that costs computationally. That has a cost. And a computational cost is usually not dispreferred by speakers. So what I and a group of my students, some of whom are also present, I hope, I cannot see, I was trying to check if there are, because they could read their examples. But I and some students, what we did is we tried to figure out what happens after a couple of times that you go on in the interaction, how much you can keep using these, especially if these constructions are extremely complex and they require a lot of computation in terms of remembering which pronoun you used, which agreement you used, what's referent. It becomes so complicated. So the feeling that I want to give you is, okay, this is a mechanism, but it is possibly not computationally light. And this is what I want to talk about to you in this first part, at least. So another thing that I need to tell you is that these pronouns that we're thinking about, these are pronouns, recycled pronouns, like the German sie. It means they, and you use it to refer to a person in front of you. So sie sind, it is more polite, let's say. Italian has lei. Lei means she. If you're talking to your addressee right in front of you. You do not want the direct access to you because it is impolite. So you say she, meaning Her Majesty. Majesty is feminine in Italian. So you say she, even if it's a man, it doesn't matter. It is she. It's a third person. Now, she, lei, that's a third person singular feminine pronoun for Italian. That's a normal pronoun that we use every day. When I want to refer to a woman, I say she, lei. It is really like she in English. But what you do is you use this she in a very funny way that we will look at in the second part of the class to try and to be polite. But what you're doing is, in fact, you are recycling. You're taking a pronoun, using it differently from what syntax would tell you. So pure basic syntax will tell you that lei should agree as a third person singular. But you're not doing that. You're making it agree in a very funny way that we will see. And then, so you derive honorificity of the C by linking the pronoun, which is in the low part of the structure. I don't know if you see the arrow here, to the honorificity, to the field that encodes honorificity, more or less, to the left, in such a way that you avoid direct address. Now, when you start using these pronouns, one of the things that were considered, let me see if I have it, is the change during conversation. This is something that we want to discuss. So basically, if you have a friend and you want to ask your friend politely to do something for you, you don't start using sie or lei. It is not that lei makes it nicer, it makes it just funny. It is not appropriate. You can't. So these pronouns are not dynamic. They don't change their meaning dynamically depending on the aim of your conversation. That's the idea of dynamicity. And we will look into a couple of things. This dynamicity I've started to think about really very recently after hearing many of Martina's talks, etc., and reading. And so I would like to do two things. First of all, addressee. How is this pronoun? How does it work? How do we exactly derive formality how do we derive politeness syntactically? What is the idea? What is necessary? So if we take languages that do not have markers for honorificity, how do we use these pronouns? Well, not just pronouns, we'll see. We use all sorts of tricks, including using the future, etc. How do we use all these tools to make a sentence polite? That's the first one. Second one, and how is the addressee, you, underlinedly, you in front of me, the one we don't want to access, is it there or is it not? So if I just told you we're using something else, the addressee, of course, the person, the referent is in front of you. That's obvious. But remember, bound beneath, the reference is not important. What is important is the discourse participant. So the addressee in front of you is there. You're not addressing them directly like you would in informal speech with a second person singular pronoun. You're trying to sever that and approach them with a third person or another form that gives you honorificity. But then this means that the addressee, discourse addressee, probably is not there. So the second person singular is there, but the discourse addressee is not there. Is this really true? Is it really so? That's one thing we want to consider. Is it really non-dynamic? Using these pronouns that are recycled, is it really non-dynamic? And also, as I told you, well, do we need a feature honorific that comes very late and possibly we will not get there? But another thing I want to ask, as I already said, is how computationally heavy is it to use honorifics? So all these questions I have in mind, and I have more questions than answers because this is work in progress. So if you have inputs, I'll be very happy to discuss it with you. one more thing I need to tell you. I've already told you actually, but I've already talked about recycling. Recycling means that you use something that's already present in your grammar, also in your lexicon, in your language. It's already there. Just use it in a different way with strange agreement forms, for instance, something strange. So to mark this distance, okay? Now, normally there's what you heard already before. There's a generalization that I took from that was drawn by Wang 2023, saying that what you actually recycle is usually unmarked elements. So you do not recycle things that are highly marked because they already mean something strange. They already marked. What you do is you recycle the most unmarked, the most innocent elements in your grammar. For instance, third person. That's really unmarked. Normally, the third person in many languages, inflectional languages, don't even have a specific ending. They end with the end of the base, the root, basically. Indefinites, something that doesn't have a definiteness to it, something really unmarked. You take these most unmarked elements and you reuse them, you recycle them in a funny way to mark honorificity or politeness. Now, remember this. Why am I telling you all this? This is very, very vague. You haven't seen a piece of data yet, but I want you to have some background to start thinking about the data, because we're going to go into the data now, and I want you to have these questions in mind. Dynamicity. Is it true that you cannot change the meaning of these of this politeness, of these pronouns that you have recycled to express politeness because they work strange? So is it true that you can't change during the conversation this meaning? Is it true that you only use unmarked elements in your grammar? Is that the case? Is it really like this? Is it easy to use these elements? How computationally heavy is it to keep track of these derived honorifics? Is it something that you do easily, or is it something that you need to spend a lot of effort on? Well, we will see it now. Okay. So now, how do we find out?
Can I have a question?
Please.
Yes. So plural number is also treated unmarked, right? The same way third person is treated unmarked. I mean, plural.
You're asking whether plural number is unmarked.
Is unmarked.
Is that the
this
question?
way.
I cannot hear you very well. Can you please repeat?
Yes, sorry. You said that unmarked items are recruited. So plural is treated as unmarked and singular as marked,
I agree with you. I agree with you. That's Wang's classification, not mine. I also have the same doubts as you, because plural marking, there is a whole system in the pragmatics to show that plural is often used also for mass and also for all sorts of things. But morphologically, plural is usually marked. It also very much depends on what sort of featural system you use. Because if you use a privative system, you see that, for instance, in some languages, you only have agreement with the plural and the singular doesn't even exist, right? So plural is the only existing value. And as such, it is the unmarked one. But this is a controversial claim. I agree with you. So very well spotted. I agree. I just wanted to bring you this to, okay? That's okay. Any other questions so far? Is it more or less clear what we want to do? Yes, please, Yukiko. Do I read it right? Yes. Oh, Elise.
Just a quick question. So third person being like unmarked, I kind of see that, but at the same time, in case of like a politeness or like a more formality issue, people tend to move away from more personal background information ones. So this pronoun system, like in English, the third person is gendered, which makes it somewhat like, I see your points of like a first person, second person being avoided, but then third person, like in the system like English one, would it be the best choice in that case? like
Yeah,
most
that's again, I
unmarked?
mean, this is again Wang's classification. I mean, she's not talking about morphological marking. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. It is really just a simple, I think the only really unmarked of all these is more indefinites, because you really need to add something to the definiteness. If you think of the way you build things in the syntax, third person is unmarked because it doesn't contain speaker and addressee, for instance. So in the Bombinista sense, that's the most unmarked. In the morphological sense, as you correctly point out, it is very marked because it has extra information. So morphologically, it is not so innocent to pick that. But if you think of the speech act, and in particular discourse, which is what matters in the case of Wang's, because she's talking about honorificity, then you might think, okay, well, perhaps that's at least it doesn't contain the feature person, because if it depends on your system. But again, this is her assumption. And as I mean, you have to make very clear assumptions about what you mean by marked. Now, there's a very interesting paper by Martin Haspermath from 2012, I think, where he lists 12 different ways of conceptualizing markedness. And most of them are in conflict with each other. Sometimes you have phonological markedness, and then you have semantic markedness, and there's pragmatic markedness, and then you have morphological markedness. And sometimes something which is more marked is less in syntax, for instance. What is more marked? Is it more marked to move things? For instance, if you want to topicalize something, you mark things because you move, let's say, to the left periphery. So you have topicalized. That's more marked because you have more operations. But if you think of the same sentence in discourse, you're talking about what you want to say right in the beginning of the clause. And that's the most unmarked. So yes, both of you are completely right that markedness needs to be really defined. I mean, that's a very interesting paper, and I don't want to go too much into that because we will not be concerned with that. But you've already spotted some, I don't want to call them weaknesses, but you need to have specific assumption about things. Okay, thank you. Okay, let's go to look at some data now, because we've talked a lot, and it is already half an hour that I'm talking or more, and so far it isn't. Well, it can be interesting, but it is we are in the clouds. I would like to focus a little bit on how do we find out is there an addressee anywhere in your an addressee in the sense of a second person, at least? Well, that there is a second person. So if we use, let's say, a third person pronoun, is there an addressee there? Yeah, well, no, we're saying that we use third person to create distance, or that we are using to avoid a second person singular, but is a second person singular there somewhere? Not just the addressee, but also the 5 features. So the grammatical ones. So are we rather talking about stacking of information? And how do we peel out the extra layers that give us honorificity and we get to the core? Well, this is, I've already told you, I think I've talked about this. So this is something that I will tell you about. This is work, before I go on, shared and in common, done together, co-authored with Iarina Albu, Gabriel Carlin Coleman, Idan Caspi, Laia Colina Fortuny, D'Alessandro Ismi, and Florence Liu. These are my students. We had a course on honorificity and on interfaces, actually. And we came up with this. This is where we're going. Now, I don't want you to understand this yet. What I want is to look at all these arrows. Each one of them connects. So there's every single little part that makes a contribution to honorificity. In the languages that we will look at, mainly Romanian and Hebrew, you don't just connect to one person and you use this person. And I mean, in a way, German is very innocent. because it takes C, it uses synth, and that's done. But these languages that do not have politeness, they reuse a lot of things. They use tense, they use agreements, they use possessives, they use different person, they use a number of things all together. So what we will see is something like this. This is you don't need to understand. I just want you to see how heavy this is. It's a lot of connections, a lot of arrows that you have to establish to create the right level of honorificity. So as you can guess, it's going to be computationally heavy. And we are going to actually show you that that's the idea. Okay. So now let's begin with the data. You already know this is a group. This is not my work. It's a shared joint work. So we are all responsible. I don't know if some of the people who co-wrote this and are co-writing this are present. If they are, that's good because they can perhaps help. I see a chat popping up now. So is there somebody? Let me see if I can see it. Oh, please. I wanted to, I see a chat. Somebody's crying. What is, I don't know if I was hoping that somebody replied. Okay. No need. Okay, so we go.
Just someone.
So I would like to know, for instance, if Yarina is there, because we're going to go to read Romanian. Maybe not. Well, she knows these things, so she probably switched. And what about Idan? He's also not there. Okay, we're going to have to do with glosses. Because, oh, well, maybe some of you will know Romanian. Let's start with Romanian. Is there any Romanian speaker here? No Romanian speakers? Can you still hear me?
Yes, I can read this.
Okay, good.
Maria să poate
Kadar?
aștepta minute.
Here we get the Romanian speaker. Great. Go ahead. Please read this for me.
Maria să poate aștepta 2 minute. Atunci vă puteți primi cafeaua.
Okay, this is beautiful. Huh? This is Romanian. And Romanian uses this form, which is, the first form is not a pronoun. This is really a noun. It is His Highness. Now, please pay attention because I get confused all the time. This Maria is Highness, not Mary. So it's not a person. This is His Highness. So you start, if you want to talk to the King of Romania that doesn't exist, but imagine there was something very important. You're going to say His Highness, and then the agreement patterns. So I want you to take a look, except for the Romanian speaker here, everyone else. Can you please tell me what in this sentence makes you think of honorificity, of honorific use? What do you see? What features? So what things pop up to your eyes that you say, okay, this must indicate honorificity. This must be an honorific use of something. Who wants to answer? Do you please put up your hand? If you put your hand, I can see you. Perhaps you put. Can you please put up your hands? Because I can possibly then see you that you want to talk, no? Who is there? Who wants to talk? I heard somebody who was talking. Oh, Jung.
Yeah, I was.
Can you please tell me your name? No, there is a Jung. Oh, Youssef, you were talking. Wait a second, Youssef. There are 2 other people who put up the hands. Let's hear them first and then you. And could you please say your name? Because remember, you're linguists. You're not supposed to know many languages, but it is all about language. And languages are one of the main, let's say, part of language. So please tell me your name.
Hi,
Yes.
it's Youngho.
Oh, we don't hear you. Can you come again?
Yeah, the name is Youngho.
Yonghu. Okay,
And
tell me one
yes,
element
and
that you think is politeness here.
so I noticed that the second person is never being addressed as a second person singular. Instead, it's being
There is
expressed
no
as if
second person singular. So the translation is, can His Highness wait for 2 minutes? Then you could have coffee. It's a very interesting sentence. There is no second person singular. Very good. Then we have Feza. Where is Feza? Disappeared.
Oh yes,
Feza?
I'm here, but
Sorry, what is
yeah.
how do you say
Hello.
your name?
Actually, you pronounce it quite perfectly. It's Feza.
Oh, perfect, perfect. Very well. Very okay, good. And what do you notice here?
Well, what was interesting for me in the sentence was that in the first sentence it's referring to His Highness as third person singular, but then it switches to second person singular. So, I mean, you know.
So 2 points. There are 2 things. There's a third person singular there. So we're talking to you. You second, you in front of me. So we normally would use you singular. English is the worst possible language for inflection. It doesn't have anything. So you singular, it's not there. There's a third singular when you talk to His Highness. And then afterwards, immediately you go to second plural.
Yes, yes.
Yusef, do you still want to say something? Or are
No,
you
I was
happy
just
with this?
yeah, I'm happy with that. I was just going to refer to the third person singular inflection.
Great, exactly. So please raise your hands because apparently and miraculously I can see the hands appear on my screen. So, you know, so this is very good. Perfect. First of all, you have an agreement mismatch, but pay attention. When we mention agreement mismatch in this context, it means mismatch between the second person singular in front of you and a third person singular use or a second person plural. We have a third person singular because we're using a name. This is not this is an address. This is really a word that we use. So it is, Maria is not a pronoun, but it is a form of politeness, His Highness. His Highness, you don't say His Highness are, but you say His Highness is. So His Highness could, third person, wait. And there is also correctly pointed out, the second sentence you already switch to a second plural. So you don't keep saying, if he could do this, if he could do that, if he could do that, because then apparently, and the Romanian speaker here could perhaps tell us if this is true also for her. I didn't see the name, but the idea is if you keep going with the third person, it seems that you are talking about someone else that is in there. So you at some point need to get back to your addressee. Your addressee is there in front of you. You cannot keep using the third person, etc., which you can, for instance, in Italian or in German. There's also something else, which is, okay, His Highness. This possessive. What does this possessive do? What does it mean, His Highness? Highness of whom? With this is kind of a frozen expression, so we don't really worry about this possessive, but let's see what happens further on. So now let's first think about, so we're talking about high honorificity, the highest honorificity. And so we have the lexical item, so Doamnia, Luminatia, etc., Lordship, Highness. Okay, these ones are words. You use the third singular. When you use this one, you use a third singular, and your agreement is in the third singular, and also you use a possessive. Then you switch. If you say you can use this in the, so His Highness, you can also use Your Highness. That's a second person use of this. You have Your Highness, and then you can agree with Your Highness in the third person or in the second person. I didn't want to put you too many sentences because on Teams without handouts, which were good, you're going to forget. So what is important is that you see the patterns. You have you can have, so all these elements, you have to read them in the same line. You can combine Maria, Domnia with possessive in the third person, in the second person, or in the second singular. So it can mean his, your plural, or your singular. And the verbal agreement will be third singular if you have a third singular or second plural if you have a second plural. So you can also have a third singular agree with a second plural. And you can have a third singular or a second plural agreeing also with a you singular, your singular. So it is, as you can see, extremely complicated. Now, what you cannot have is a second plural agreeing with sa, third person, apparently. So there is some constraint there, but it is really all these elements are contributing to honorificity. Now, if we look at, you heard yesterday about positive and negative phase. And normally, negative phase is something like, I don't want to be in your space. You have to leave me alone, more or less. But also, by extension, creating a distance between you and the interlocutor could be a sort of negative phase, or keeping things formal, keeping things separate. I'm not going to be your friend. The moment you add this possessive, the possessive brings things back to close to you. So the possessive seems to be more of in a positive phase, kind of positive phase kind of element. Of course, you can say you are my majesty, so I'm your slave or something, whatever you want to say. So I'm subject, I'm your subject. But still, when you say my, it is like my dear, my person, my honor, my everything. My gets it close to you in any event. You don't say my to say you're far away from me. That's not the concept. So here, it is very difficult to establish what's going on. We don't have it. We have a generalization. The generalization is that already from sentence 1 to sentence 2, remember, the first you started with, that was noted by Faiza, from start with third singular, you go on with second plural, you have some sort of path of reduction of honorificity, or at least you reduce the complexity. So you start with the highest honorificity, which is a third person singular with the possessive honorific, and it is all in the third person. Then you go into something that we skipped upon. So look at we didn't mention this, but I secretly stuck some pro here. Do you see the pro? Do you see what pro here? Okay, we didn't mention this. We looked at the second plural agreement. But let's imagine this is, I will tell you in a minute, there is a second person plural agreement. And then we can go on, and if we go on after a while, you can end up eventually with a second person singular. So you eliminate honorificity altogether. So if you become friends, let's say. So now what I want you to see is look at the colors. And if these are badly color coded, you can see the different shades in any event. You can see the blue, or at least the color of the possessive honorifics and the third person singular. I mean, what you can see here is a decrease in degrees of honorificity. In other words, there are some things that keep the honorificity, the plurality. In the intermediate honorificity, you keep the plurality, and that keeps you in the honorific zone. The second person puts you in the friend zone, let's say. And then you, in the end up with a second singular, which is you in front of me, the addressee directly. So you have a coincidence between the features of the pronoun and the addressee. So within 2 or 3 turns, we have decreased the honorificity. But if we can decrease honorificity gradually, This means that there are several components to it. It is not so simple as you take one and you link it. That's not going to be it. It is not so simple. Now, don't worry, you see 86 slides, but I added a lot of extra slides. So this is not the problem. The problem is that you follow with me the methodology of understanding a problem. So do you see the problem here? Do you see what's happening? What is happening here is we have a gradual decrease in honorificity, and we have some things that, at least from what we have defined in the beginning, express distance or honorificity, such as the third singular or the plurality, and some others that slowly switch to the friend zone. We are friends. You are no longer my majesty, you are my addressee, direct addressee. Now, what is interesting here also is that you go through this pro stage. What is this pro? Let's go. Pro, quickly, is a silent pronoun. Most of you will know this, so just go get the coffee, while the others who haven't heard of pro can stay on. Pro is what we call a silent pronoun. It's like if the pronoun was there, but we don't pronounce it. So you can take a look at 13 and 14. In 13, you have an overt subject, so-called overt subject. Luisa has eaten an apple. Who is the subject? Luisa. Okay. In 14, in many languages, including Italian, this is Italian, I hope you've recognized, we can say ha mangiato una mela without saying who. Now, out of the blue, it's a bit strange to say this. So you have to have ostension. You have to say, oh, ha mangiato una mela, but probably you're referring to something else, someone else that you've already mentioned before. Now, notice that many languages have prodrop, many, and Italian is a very well-behaved subject drop in the subject position, but it cannot do the object drop. There are languages that are much more extreme, such as, for instance, Chinese, where you can drop everything and you still understand each other perfectly well. So the pronoun is there. It is intended. You don't need agreement to retrieve it. Because Chinese has no agreement. Unless they changed the language yesterday night, there is no agreement there. So you cannot know who the subject is because you reconstruct it via agreement. You have to know what the topic is that you're talking about. Okay, that's extreme. In Italian, you can do it with agreement. So agreement is helping you because Italians are, let's say, less easy, I don't want to say more stupid because this would be an offense to all Italians, but it is easier to retrieve if you have a pronoun, an ending. It's a joke. I'm Italian, for those of you who haven't heard that. That's why I say this. Okay, let's go back to the pro. The problem, gradual disappearance of the honorificity. Let's look at Hebrew now. If my sir, so is there anybody who speaks Hebrew in the audience who can read this for us? No, that's too bad. Okay, we go with the glosses. If my sir is able, will be able to wait 2 minutes, then you will be able to drink coffee. Now, English is not good again because you say will be and will be for the third or for the second. But if you look at the glosses, what this is saying is if my sir is able in the future, will be able third person, future, to wait 2 minutes, then you or no subject, both are fine, will be able, second person singular, so addressee directly, to drink coffee. So within one turn, you've already eliminated all the honorificity, right? Importantly, you cannot make it in the other way around. So what we're trying to explain here is that you cannot you cannot do it in any other direction. You cannot start by saying, oh, if you, second singular, are able to drink coffee, my sir will be, then it's two separate people. It cannot be understood. So you always have to start with the most complex and the most honorific, and then you can decrease honorificity. Okay? So here again, we have the same as before, but what is interesting in Hebrew is that you have, again, a possessive, but you also have a future, and you have a third person. So my sir, and then you have, or my honor, or it would be the opposite of your honor. It would be the correspondent form of your honor, but you say my is able, so third person, in the future. So there is another element that we're using here, which is the tense. And again, now we go back to the very good questions that were asked before by Youssef and Yukiko. Is future then unmarked? How is future unmarked? I don't think there's a way in which you can, well, maybe you can, but I can't. I mean, normally the present is the unmarked. Whatever you do, if you reduce it to every that are linked to definiteness, to boundedness, everything disappears. The future is marked somehow. Yet they don't recycle the present. They recycle the future. So they take the future in Hebrew to add another layer of honorificity. So let's look at honorificity in Hebrew, and we have again the possessive honorific. We have a third person future. We have a third person again, which is the distance making, extremely honorific, and we have the future tense. So we have possessive, future, and third person. 3, singular in this case. Then we go in the second turn, we use the pro or the overt pronoun, the second person, overt pronoun. How do we know it's pro is second person? I'll tell you in a minute. But of course, you say you see it from agreement, but we can see it also in other ways. And if you look at the colors, and I hope you all can see at least the difference between the two, future remains all the way through low honorificity. And the moment you lose the future, you have lost honorificity. So these features act separately, one from the other. So you can reduce honorificity by removing a third person, by removing the possessive, by removing the pronoun, actually. But the moment you remove the future, so we can say, okay, is the future then the only element that gives honorificity? Not really. I mean, this reduction, you can observe this in the reduction, but if you use a future out of the blue, it will be interpreted as a future. It will not be interpreted as honorific. It will be interpreted like you will go tomorrow to school, not you honorific. So it is really the procedure of observing the several rounds of discourse is really important to single out, to understand what the single components are, because they behave separately. There's also another methodology that you can use, and that's looking at, for instance, heritage languages or languages with lower inputs. The language is spoken, for instance, in a household where outside of this household or little community, they speak another language. For instance, the language of emigrants. If a family has emigrated, they speak this language, their children speak this language, but around them, they speak another language. So the input is reduced, and when you have reduced input, there is always a reduction. Actually, we are going to check this, Britta, me, and Jason Rothman, possibly soon, with some Indian communities, because we need to understand what is peeling out. In this case, again, we have pro. Now, what are the features of pro? How do we know? Well, one thing we could do is, because, pro is silent. So you could say, well, why do you say this pro is second person? Well, you see it from the agreement on the verb, but then you could say, well, we have seen before in Romanian that even if you have third person singular, you can have a second person plural agreement, because honorifics do funny things. So how do we know what if this pro is addressee or it's a third person? The fact that you have to pass through a pro, I don't think it's an innocent choice that our languages do. Pro is unmarked, so you can't give it any value. But one way is to force, for instance, to use a reflexive. If you try to use a third person reflexive, so if you try to say, to put, instead of the sentences, sorry. If my sir can clean here, then you will be able to see yourself in the mirror. So you use a reflexive. Now, if you say in Hebrew, if my sir cleans, future, here, then pro, silent pronoun, see, second singular, okay, but we don't want to trust the agreement, yourself, second singular, and not himself, third singular. That's ungrammatical. You cannot put a himself there. So it is really, really, we have switched from formal to informal, from honorific to non-honorific with the pro. The pro is already non-honorific in this. In Romanian, the condition is different. And you see, in fact, I didn't put an asterisk, but I put that, what is it called? The hashtag, for goodness. Hashtag. Why that? Because you can use se, but it apparently it means that so first of all, you have to change the agreement on the verb if you use that se, but because that's a kind of different it's a different construction, but you have to it means you're talking about someone else. Then he can see himself in the mirror, but you're not talking about your highness. I'm talking about someone else. So it is a possible sentence, but it doesn't mean what we want it to mean. In other words, the switch to pro, like passing to the silent pronoun, it is probably a strategy, a pragmatic strategy, which has some convenience to it, because when you are avoiding the pronoun, you still are, remember Japanese, you still are in the realm of, well, I'm not being very clear about who the referent is. So the pro in isolation might mean a third person, but in fact, syntactically, we've already gone into the second person singular. Okay? Are you with me now? Is there a question, please? Sorry?
May I ask a question? Yeah, it's
Go
me,
ahead,
Yusuf.
please.
Okay.
Yes, please.
So I would like to ask a question regarding this strategy of the pro, and I would like to ask if this is enhanced by the agreement, because, for example, I'm referring now to my native language, which is Egyptian Arabic. Well, in Egyptian Arabic, you have a lexicalized element, your presence, that is used as an honorific, but then this your presence is always followed by the verb in the second person and not in the third person. So there's this sort of agreement mismatch. So, and of course, I mean, Egyptian Arabic is also a pro-drop language like Hebrew and Italian and whatnot. But then in Italian, for example, you could drop the pronoun and say ha mangiato, ha fatto qualcosa, and you don't have to use the lei. But in Egyptian Arabic, you can't do that because otherwise it would be confused with the normal second person. You have to use your presence.
Yeah,
So
that's
I was
perfect.
wondering
Yes,
if this is also a case of grammaticalization, maybe. I don't know.
well, yeah, I mean, the role of agreement is that, I mean, we've seen in Romanian that you can do, so the mismatch between the pro and the agreement is one strategy in itself. The only thing is that here in this particular language, it doesn't work like this, but it can definitely, especially for, it can definitely be used, I would say, also in non-pro. I mean, it can definitely be that you can keep using the pro in the third person. And that's perfect, actually, because you are keeping the honorificity then, right? Did I get it right? That you keep you are keeping the honorificity. So this strategy is telling you honorificity is decreasing. In fact, when you put an overt pronoun, it decreases even more. So you have a step which is using this pro with the second person. Okay. Then you have another one in which you insert the person. In Egyptian Arabic, as you're saying, you don't go immediately. You keep you keep this with the third. So absolutely, yes. That's like in Italian, you keep the third person with the pro, and this keeps the honorificity. So this is, every language has a different strategy. And this is also something that we're talking about discourse. Now, when you talk about core syntax in the meaning, if something is a subject in a nominative accusative language, the subject would be nominative. You have no escape. More or less, that's fixed. You do that marker. Third person singular is S in English. You don't go. I mean, there are exceptions, morphological stuff, but you don't escape when it's about verb and it's when it's about discourse. It's about strategies, and it's about how long you want to keep the honorificity. You don't have to start with the honorificity at all to start with. So of course you have different layers. This is just perfect what you're saying. Very interesting. Thank you. Anything else? So now, what are we trying to do? Now, let's move a little bit from Martina's scheme, etc., and all this thing. And let's think about cognition. What are we trying to do when we are reducing distance? Well, our proposal is that we're actually trying to increase deixis. So deixis is the unmarked. Deixis is here and now. So you don't need to, if you don't specify anything, everything you say will be interpreted as here and now. This is a picture of deixis that I couldn't do better because I cannot draw and ChatGPT can draw even less. But anyway, the idea is deixis is the understanding of here and now. So if you say this, it is interpreted as the object, which is here next to me now. So when you use honorificity, you are decreasing deixis. You are pushing things away from here and now. You're pushing the addressee away from you. You're pushing the tense away from you. You're going to the future. You're pushing the person from second person to a third person. The only thing that doesn't really quite work is the possessive in all this. And we're still puzzled by this because the possessive is actually increasing the deixis. But everything else, I mean, it is a form of, I don't know, of saying I am your subject or something like that. I don't know, because it is really a bit funny to have a possessive there, but it is like that, so we need to account for it. But everything else is increasing deixis. So you are putting things away from you, but putting things away from you is cognitively heavy. You need to keep track of all these other dimensions. So basically, what you're trying to do is returning to the common ground. You entering the addressee field. Basically, you're trying to get back to here and now and what we share in this moment. You can express this in several different ways. You could say that you're switching the minus coincidence to the plus coincidence. So the second person singular is not coincident with the addressee. It means that it is something else, someone else. But then you're putting back the plus coincidence. But what I want to stress and underline here is that you are doing this bit by bit, not in one go, feature by feature. And there are some features that are crucial, and which feature is crucial depends on the language. Okay, so this is something, the same thing I said. So obviously tense has to do with not now, but in the future, or maybe it's in the, so the mood, the conditional mood, which is an irrealis. If this happened, that's also a way of disrupting deixis. So we have gone from a maximal deixis, once again, third singular, into some deixis, second plural, to maximal deixis, second singular. So we're bringing things back towards the addressee. So in other words, you can say it's like if we're peeling up all our construction and being left with the addressee, second person singular, which is the basic and most deictic thing there is. This is exactly the same. Indirect address, less direct address, several different ways. I hope the intuition behind this, whichever formal way you want to express it, is clear. Now, if we want to look at this, then we go look back at this. And now you know what I mean. I mean, if you take, for instance, tense, this is, so the CP is the basic clause and everything else is above. Actually, yeah, we where this is situated, all this left periphery, is it here above the TP or is it above the CP? That's also controversial. But anyway, we don't need to go into this. Imagine it's somewhere. Now, tense. This is the tense head. You have a deictic tense. What you do to get your honorificity is you link it to the external tense, which is the future, or you link it to the conditional. So you remove the tense, basically. The person, you use a third person, but what you do is actually, this is you're using a pronoun, but this is not the third person who is present here, you or he or she. It's you referring to he or she. So you link it, you link everything, and you say, well, my addressee is not coincident with the pronoun. It is a third person singular, and you use the same form. Now, the best way would be to use the second person singular and link it and unground and make it non-coincident with the common ground addressee. But actually, what we actually do is we take already a third person, which is already inflected in the right way. And what we do is then we manage with agreement and change the agreement in such a way that it becomes clear that this third person singular has an honorific use and not a referential use. Okay, but so even if needs to be put in the politeness field. Say one upstairs is the politeness field, and everything you have downstairs is your raw sentence, and everything has to be linked to this field to say, hey, but this is an honorific use. This is what this more or less means. We've done this. What do we do to reduce, to enhance deixis, to get back to reduce the computational load and calculating all these things? And the calculations can perhaps, I can get to show you some funny calculations in a minute, but you've seen enough also. We de-link. We just get back. For instance, we eliminate the future. Well, the future is the last one to die, actually. What we do first is we eliminate the possessive. We eliminate the subject, the third person. We eliminate the if, which if suspends time. If you want to say you eat an apple, that means you ate an apple or you eat an apple. It's interpreted as here and now, more or less, or every day or something like this. If you say, if you eat an apple, you suspend time. We don't know. It's irrealis. You don't know when and if it happens, right? So when you use this, you are putting away the action from here and now. Same thing over and over again. So we are left, if we start severing these links, let's say visually, we are left with the pro, as we've seen, which is a second person singular, and we are left with the future, with the future tense. Now, what happens if so you see, we have a future tense downstairs, and we have a future politeness use of future, let's say, upstairs. If we stop this, if we stop this politeness tense, this politeness future, what you actually have is a normal future. So future is there. It is not that you create the future by linking. You are linking your future to the politeness, to the shared idea that this is a politeness used of the future. So you are actually mapping the actual morphological future and syntactic future to a politeness future. If you delink this, you are left with a normal future. It is not that then you become present tense, or you can also become present tense, but then you have to change. But it is not about, so the real future and the real second person singular and the real third person singular exist in the language. That's the idea of recycling. They mean something else. It is that when you link them upstairs, they become honorific. So if you delink them, you lose. And you lose little by little, and a step at a time, a little bit of honorificity at a time. And you're left with tense. Tense is the last one to die. Future is the last one to die. This could be some sort of philosophical idea coming from this. Future will always resist, at least when you want to be polite. And then you lose everything, and you come back to hi, I, and you. So we have an intermediate level in which you start delinking, and a final in which you delink. And there's maximal deixis if you have delinked everything. If you have a sentence where everything is delinked, and after a while you understand that you are talking about either a real future, or you go to the present tense if you want to have deixis, maximal deixis. Okay. Now, I've told you now that there is a path. There is a path from more complex to less complex. There is a path where I'm assuming that the non-honorific is the simplest. And the more honorific, the most honorific is the most complicated and most complex. So now there are more instances of the path, but not in the sense of honorificity, in the sense of politeness. I told you before that politeness is something that is somehow related to honorificity, but not in the same way. It is just an attitude you have, like in the sense that it's an attitude that you express in discourse. Politeness, is something that we see a lot. In English, it is used. You have an example there, like, John, we have to stop, meaning, John, you have to stop. So it is a completely different thing. It is just getting people close to you, like the possessive. Remember, close to you in your sphere of action. It is a sort of positive phase. Spanish, same. Where are there Spanish speakers there in the audience? No Spanish speakers at all?
Hello. Yes, I'm a native Spanish speaker.
Nicolás, go ahead. Please read this for us.
Tenemos que parar. No me estáis escuchando. Well, I'm Chilean. I'm not Castilian, but kind of.
You are perfect. Yeah, so Chilean Spanish reads this beautiful sentence. So beautiful sentence. It's a sentence, but it's beautiful to hear it in Spanish. So you're like, hey, we have to stop. Do you agree, Nicolás? We have to stop. You are not listening. And this means, hey, we have to stop. You have to stop. So if you have basically, so the teacher gets into the class and say, hey, we have to stop. Meaning stop, you stop, not me. I am not making noise. You are not listening. So we have immediately a switch. Now, this is a sort of decrease of. So we are going, this is another instance of path which is a different kind of path. And we can talk about this, but this will take too long. But again, we start from a more complex situation in which we are including ourselves in a group to which we don't belong. And then we immediately decrease and we go immediately to the you, deictic you. Other instances of what we call addressee surfacing, which is maximal deixis, the addressee comes out, are found in Abruzzese, which is the language I told you, which is my language, so I'll read it for you, unless there are other Abruzzese speakers in the audience, which is unlikely, but you never know. No. No. Okay. This is Abruzzese. Se non fa, per favor. What does it mean? It means if you want to do it, please. This is an irrealis. This is not saying do it, please. It is if you want to do it, meaning please do it. So it's the sentence is over. It is not if you want to do it, do it. It is if you want to do it, meaning do it. So it is another way of adding politeness by using irrealis, by using an if clause, suspending time, suspending your deictic reference right away. And in Chinese, we have another Chinese, because we've already heard Jung Ho. Do we have another Chinese speaker?
No, sorry, I'm Chinese speaker.
Hi, Professor. Am I audible?
Lauren? Lauren?
Yes.
Okay, please.
Okay. So the sentence reads, 你什么时候有空呢?
I like to read these examples to hear the real language, because we're talking blah blah blah, but this is how it is, and this means when are you free? And do you agree that this is a what time is free or what time is free? And this means when are you free? This is a polite way of asking. Do you agree? I have absolutely no idea about this. Do you agree, Lauren?
I think it depends on the context, maybe.
But if you say,
I think.
No, I'm saying so the idea here is if you say it without the overt subject, it is more polite. And if you say, what time do you have, etc. So you have an overt subject, then it becomes strange or not polite, or not polite, not friendly, or something like this.
Yeah, I think this sentence is more polite than the sentence that without asking you, without a specific mark.
Okay, we leave the Chinese here because I only have this example and we need to ask more and to work more. But anyway, you recognize this as somehow polite. So pro is kind of making it less deictic, let's say. That would be the idea. Or perhaps not. I don't really know at this point, because there's several.
Can I interrupt you?
Please.
Yeah, I'm a native Chinese speaker and I speak Northern Mandarin. I think in Northern Mandarin, it's a case that without overt second pronoun marker you, it sounds a little bit more polite. But maybe for Lauren, she's speaking the other dialect, the southern dialect, probably.
Fair enough. Yes, indeed. Okay, that depends. That's very good that you mentioned this, because especially in the case of politeness, etc., but also in general, variation is always there. So whatever data you come across, always remember that this is one example. So we try to check this also given by a native speaker, but this doesn't mean, and also this is ongoing work. So thank you very much for your feedback. But always remember, and good that it came out, that there can be variation in judgments, variation in all sorts of things. So what I want to tell you with this is that there are other strategies in which you kind of push away the referent the addressee by using by not mentioning it directly, or by using an if clause, or by using we. There, I mean, there's all sorts of strategies to, we call it some sort of cover the addressee, shade the addressee, or in other words, decrease the deixis. But then the deixis will always come back to you, because that's the easiest. That's the most least cognitively heavy. And this is something which is, it's anchoring. This is a strategy that you see at work in several different environments. You see this at work in the adaptation of the heritage languages. You see this in the emergence of creoles. You see this in several different contexts. That's the first thing you fix. You get back to reality, let's say. And if you want to maximize the distance, of course, you remove things from reality. But remember, reality will always surface back. That's the message. Now, possessive honorifics and politeness, they follow. I didn't show you the path of politeness because it's too long, and I want to present for a little time, some data on something else. There is maintaining complex honorific links is too demanding in the long run. So there's a tendency to reduce this complexity. There's a tendency of deixis to emerge, to get back to the addressee surfacing. And honorificity is dependent on person and event deixis, meaning it is, so you are it is dependent. It is actually getting away from person and event deixis, but we believe that deixis is really one of the crucial elements there for honorificity. Now, do you want to breathe a little bit? Do you need 2 minutes for coffee? Because we're going quickly into agree. And I want to show you here, I'm not going to give you syntax because that's even more complicated, and I'm not going to give you this, but the data I think are worthwhile, and these are some kind of ideas on which you can also think on your side for your language, etc. So I want to throw them there because this, after all, is not a talk, but it is a summer school. So I want to show you what sort of research you can do and what sort of questions you can ask. What's the idea? Do you want 5 minutes? Madhusmita, are you still there? Did you break? Because yesterday I followed bits and pieces, so I didn't know if you had a short break. I think Madhusmita is not there. I don't know who's there. Rita, somebody?
Yes, I'm here. Roberta, we can take a break. We can take a short break.
5 minutes, just 5 minutes for you to breathe if you want.
Yes, we could do that. I mean, it's 5. We could do that for about 5 minutes.
But really just 5 minutes or not. I mean, if it is not necessary for me, it is just for you because we're changing topics. So we can do one thing. Those of you who want to go for coffee, they can go for coffee. And those of you who want to stay and maybe ask a question, they can ask a question. And then we're switching topics.
Okay. So
the topic is always the same, but we're switching languages. Yes, Yukiko, you have a question. You're muted, so I cannot hear you. I don't know if you're talking at all. Hello, Yukiko, are you there? I don't know. Okay, I cannot hear you. Is there anything there? So Yukiko, I see that she raised her hand, but I cannot hear anything. Can you hear me, Madhusmita?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yes.
Okay, good.
I can hear.
So there is one question, but I don't hear the the question, the person.
So if there are other questions, we can take them now, right? Because we have around 25 minutes left in the talk. So it would be better to use this time for questions then, if you don't mind that.
Precisely. So that's what I'm saying. So if you want to go for a coffee or whatever, you go in 5 minutes. In the meantime, we have some questions, and then I go into showing you some data and with the questions we had in mind.
May I ask a question?
Please, go ahead.
Yeah, so reflecting again on Egyptian Arabic, because now it's now giving me like some ideas what you've been saying. So again, on the example of your prisons, also your happiness. Now I'm thinking about it. There's also your happiness in Egyptian Arabic as an honorific marker. So the fact that they can only agree with they can only be followed by a second person singular. This means that you cannot have this strategy of using pro. And then and still maintain honorificity. Does that mean that we do not have this sort of degrees of honorificity in Egyptian Arabic?
That you will have to tell me that. I don't know.
Yeah.
You have to. It might be, or maybe even that you find other strategies. You need to pay attention to this. So I'm very happy that you say now that I'm thinking about it, because that's exactly the idea. You can start thinking, hey, what do we do? Do we use pro? Maybe you don't use pro. It seems that you don't, but maybe you use something else. Maybe you use the if clause. Maybe you use a different tense, or maybe you use a different mood. Maybe you use something else. So think about it and see, and then you let me know, because I cannot know. You need to study and read the language and like listen and think about it. So that's a question that I ask you now, and I'm curious to hear. Okay. Then we have Daria.
Yeah, so I have more like a research idea question than a data question. So we have languages where the singular number is marked and the plural is unmarked, like English, yeah? So do you have children? Yes. And the plural means either a single child or many children. But there are also languages like Armenian where the plural is marked and the singular is not. And they ask something like, do you have child? And yeah, and that means either singular child or many. And I was thinking maybe there could be a correspondence between the honorific like use of plural, because if the plural is in fact marked in the language, maybe Armenian would not use it to mark the distance or the so to say on like
yes, honorificity. Perfect. That's a great idea. So what I would suggest is you go and read Wang and everything, because she's surveyed like 150 languages, really many. So it is not that she made up stuff. It's a very nice paper. But if you want to check the correspondence between maybe markedness and honorificity in your language, that's a perfect research question. And you can check whether it's true or whether you use other strategies. That's really a great idea. So, like I said to Youssef, let me know what you find out. Because if it is your language, I assume, or if not, just go and ask.
No, it isn't. No, it isn't. But I think there are ways to
know about it. So yeah, well then, yes, great, fantastic. It's a great question. Yukiko, are you there? Can you talk now?
Hi, sorry, Zoom froze. Oops. Hopefully it's can you hear me now?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
I have a couple of like theoretical questions and just one tense issue like to mention. I mean, just start with the tense one. I was actually surprised when you said the future is unmarked. Like you were surprised like future is unmarked because it's normally marked. But in language like Japanese, where the tense is just like a past versus non-past, future is actually very unmarked. So I don't know how that language like tense system works. I was actually quite surprised to find the future as the default tense choice. That's actually just one comment. But theoretically, the Romanian example, starting with third person and then like going for the second person, that was a little bit intriguing to me when I think about the lexical insertion timing and what kind of like a feature set the syntax syntax should have, because in the lower clause, like you will have second person, right? Either agreement for the overt pronoun, the second person agreement, plural. But then in higher up, like the Your Highness part, you have third person agreement. If it's more like a reflexive type, like a pronoun, like a binding here and there, then syntax should ignore that. It shouldn't crash it before you reach to like higher up with like honorific checking. Then question is like, do you have to have a specified like a 5-feature set like at the syntactic level? If not, then like choice, it's a little bit questionable why like languages show tendency to choose third person over second person. There is a clear tendency like unmarked one gets like chosen, right? But that pattern's not clear to me, because if the syntactic
so what you're asking is basically, if you have a third person, how do you agree with the second? It is just doesn't make sense. So there is a mismatch. So this mismatch, how does it work in the syntax?
Yeah.
Because it shouldn't be. So you basically have, that's a great question that I've been asking since like 2000. It's been forever in my mind, because there's two ways. One way is so basically what you're expecting to happen is agreement when it should apply. And once it has happened, you cannot overwrite it because the features are happy and valued. So what you're doing is a kind of agreement overruling. You put another agreement to mark this. And while it's very easy to say, well, you use the strategy to mark, in syntax, that's a problem, because you need to have some sort of, you have to silence the obvious syntactic agreement and impose an agreement based on 5 features that don't exist, basically, because these are 5 features that are attributed for honorificity, and especially if you have a pro and stuff like that, that's absolutely a big problem. So one way I try to think about it is to separate the basic syntactic features from semantic features or pragmatic features and say that these two are in competition. But it's a trick. I know what you're thinking, and I agree. It's a trick. It is a genuine problem.
Circular, whichever way you touch up on when you think about morphology and the syntax and the semantics all together.
Indeed.
So like wherever you put the prof timings and stuff, it's a little bit of, you don't want to lose the generalization, like a general pattern you observe. But that's to account for that is really tricky.
It's agreement. It is a sort of agreement stacking, but then one agreement cancels the other. That's a problem that you have also in other kinds of when you give topic. For instance, there's a phenomenon which is called topic-oriented agreement in agreeing languages, in like some languages in Italy. Same problem. Five features say one thing, and then the topic decides no. You agree with me. You overwrite that, but then how do you do it in technical? Descriptively it's easy. Technically, it's a problem. So if you ever find out, we can talk on another, because now we have to move on. We take the last question, but it is a fantastic question indeed. Last question, because then I want to show you some more data in which agreement doesn't work as it should. So please.
Yes, I wanted to tell you something about Korean, and I thought this was really interesting because Korean doesn't have any 5-feature agreement, but the pattern that you described about Your Highness and small pro does exist in Korean as well. So if you're going to say, if Your Highness if honorific waits 2 minutes, then small pro can have coffee. It's okay to use honorific, honorific. It's okay to use pro and pro. It's okay to use honorific, overt pronoun, and then small pro, but it's not okay to use small pro and then use the overt honorific. Then it means 2 different people. So the explanation you have to come up with.
I need to stop you now because we need to go on, and because Korean is the single most complicated honorific system in the entire universe, not just on Earth. So that's a system that's been studied and determined, and it is, as you say. So we have no time to even start thinking about it, because indeed it has so much. But there is a lot, and it's a very good question and a very good observation. But we cannot tackle it here because it is so. Thanks for mentioning it, so that everybody knows now that they should look into Korean if they want to know how hell looks like with respect to these sorts of patterns. It is a fantastically rich language for that. Okay, now I want to show you, thank you. I want to show you some crazy agreement patterns so that Yukiko is also happier now, because we said agreement mismatches creates honorificity, but what kind of thing do you say? How do you actually do this honorificity? Now I want to show you, just show you. I will not have time, nor it is a lot of extra work to give you also the analysis, but just the data, so that you can see the question and also see why Yukiko's question was, well, a good one. There's a syntactic problem when you look at things in detail. So we have in Italian two pronouns, two honorific pronouns. Both of them are pronouns that are recycled. We have a second person plural, voi, which is like French, vous. Now, voi is only used at the moment in the south of Italy. So there's a part of Italy that doesn't use it, but the south of Italy uses, in Italian, they use this part. Then there is lei, which is a third person singular feminine, like she. And it is more or less being added later. There's a long story of this, which is very funny. And if I had the time, I would tell you, but you should know that neither of those are Latin. In Latin, there was two direct addressee, that's it. So there is the famous Ave Caesar Morituri te salutant. There's also the series, the Netflix series. It says, so those who are about to die, greet you, te, second person singular, addressee, noble likeness, and he was the Caesar. So he was the emperor. So finito des, there's no other thing. And then there's a lot of history here, but it is fun for the Italians, but maybe not for the rest. How does voi work? So one thing that you need to look at is, so you have you. When I write it with a big V, that's the honorific use, second plural honorific. You are beautiful. Now imagine you have a woman in front of you. You want to say you're beautiful. You say you, second plural honorific, are, second plural, agreeing with you, and then beautiful agreeing with the referent. So singular, feminine. Now this is already a problem, because you have two separate kinds of agreements. One part, the copula is agreeing with the pronoun, the adjective is agreeing with the referent. What is the referent syntactically? Where is this information encoded? Now, again, if you have an addressee, a second person singular, one person in front of you, you can say you're beautiful singular, masculine, feminine, whichever you want. Italian only marks masculine and feminine, so there's no neuter, but masculine and feminine, singular. If you have your adjective agree with the second person plural, you are beautiful. This is not honorific. I mean, yes, it can be honorific, but this means something else. This means you people are beautiful. This is the normal agreement. It is okay with plural reference, but it is not okay with singular reference. So if you have one person in front of you, you cannot agree with you. Your adjective cannot agree or concord, if you want, with the you. This is Bambanis from before, remember. Oh, I need to tell you something about the dynamics that I didn't mention about before, and I'll tell you just before we end, perhaps. Well, just let me tell, because it was about before, about the section before. We don't change, we don't start using these pronouns to be polite in the middle of a conversation. So we saw that there is a path. You start from the most This is from before, just an adapt because I forgot to mention. You start from the most honorific and you go to the least honorific. But it's not that now if you want to be polite with your friend, you start using the most honorific. There is one instance, though, in which you do start using the most honorific form in the middle of a conversation in which you were being completely informal. And that's when you have interactions on social media and you fight with somebody and you want to establish the distance. So you start with, you're my friend, second person singular, then all of a sudden you fight. Immediately you start using the vous, the distance pronoun. That's to establish distance. Again, I don't know you. Who are you? This is bad face, negative face all the way. So there is some dynamic also with these pronouns. Okay, now we go back to Benveniste. Remember the three instances, the syntactic instances, the discourse instance, and the referent. We've already talked about this. So now, if we say, for instance, he said that he would come, we have the same reference, or I mean, in the co-indexed reading, the person is not there. So syntactically, you have a third person in both cases or in no person. And you use the same pronoun. Sorry, for discourse, you're talking about non-addressee and non-speaker. You can say, he said, I will come. In this case, you're using two separate and different pronouns. Now, they refer to the same referent. In discourse, one is no person, and in the other one is the speaker. So these things can be modulated. This is all I wanted to say from before. Now, let's go to voi again. Remember voi. The copula agrees with voi in a predicative construction, and the adjective agrees with the referent. Now, if you want to say, I saw you, polite, you have to do the same. Well, with you, polite, honorific, you, that's an object now. It's in the accusative. I have, because this is a pro-drop language, I have seen you. Seen has to be, again, feminine singular or masculine singular. Normally, the object agrees with the past participle. So you should have, in normal syntax, vo vis ti plural, but in fact you have vo vis ta or vis to singular agreeing with the referent again. That's strange, and this is exactly the same that happens with you. With you, there is a trick here that I want you to notice, because this is a trick that you can use to see if there is an addressee feature there. So with you singular in Italian, tu, you have, I have seen you. This is normal, not honorific. If it is a woman in front of you, you can use both the feminine and the masculine. So you can say, I've seen feminine you. I've seen masculine you. In both cases, seen is singular because you're referring to one person. So you can use either the masculine or the feminine for the past participle. With you singular. Now, if you look at what happens with the you plural, I have is I have. You plural, you have one addressee, you have a you plural honorific, but the past participle behaves like the past participle of the you singular. You know, in Italian, agreement is fixed. You can't choose if you have either or. This is one of the very few exceptions in which you can choose feminine or masculine. The masculine is the default. You can specify the feminine. You can do it basically in this construction and another one. You do exactly the same. So the past participle behaves completely as if there was a second person singular here instead of the honorific. Not a second person plural. So who's the fake features one? Now, you say the fake features are those of the honorific, because the past participle agrees with the object as if the object was a second singular. It even has the alternation, which is very special for Italian. So it is exactly like a second person singular. So the fake one is the second plural. That's the features we should disregard, except they agree with the copula. The copula is plural. So this is a mismatch, which is very annoying because you have V behaving like, so a second plural behaving like a second plural when it's about agreeing with a copula, and behaving like a second singular when it's agreeing with a participle and with an adjective. Now, the adjective, you can say, well, that's more concord, it's ad sensum, but the participle does only syntactic agreement. So that's a problem. I want to show you another mad agreement pattern. Lei. So there's no solution. This is just to tell you, pay attention to agreement. Pay attention to syntax, because things are easy to describe, much more difficult to derive. Lei is she. That's the other pronoun. She is third person singular. You see it here. If you have a woman in front of you, you can say she is beautiful, feminine. If you have a man in front of you, a man, you can say she is beautiful, masculine. So you say it's like boy. Actually, no, because you can say she is beautiful, feminine to a man. Lei è bella, lei è simpatica, lei, it is like in these contexts in which you see it better, I find you changed. I found that you changed with lei. I found that she, polite, has changed. If she is a woman, you can say, I found that she has changed, feminine. If you have a man in front of you, you can say, I found that she, feminine, has changed, masculine, because you have a man. But if you have a man, you can also say, I found that she, honorific, has changed, feminine, to a man. So you can have both. You have a kind of syntactic agreement and you have a semantic agreement, and they're both grammatical. So who's winning? It is clear that we're talking about two separate kinds of sets of features. If you want to think of syntax like a system which blindly matches features one to the other, these patterns cannot be explained. It is really, here you have stacking of past participles. That's really way too complicated. And I close with this. You can have, I have found you changed. So you're going to have, I have found, agreeing with you, feminine. I found she. She is up here. It's the L. That's she. You, she, I have found, you're talking to a woman, found, feminine, changed, feminine. You're talking to a man, you can say, I have found feminine. You changed feminine to a man. You can say, I have found feminine. You changed masculine. But you cannot say, I found masculine. You changed feminine. So there is a lot going on. You kick off all your joy. There is a mess in agreement, and the mismatch is there. How to derive it is an entirely different thing. This is it for now. I had some other slides. What I want to tell you is If you're interested in anything, well, this project was more about heritage and how things evolve in heritage. Contact me if you have questions. Contact me. You can Google me or you can find me, or this is my address. That's my website. The only thing you don't contact me for is jobs, because they're firing us. So we don't have jobs, unfortunately. I wish. For everything else, please feel free to contact me. And thank you so much for bearing with me for so long. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Roberta. It was a very interesting
Thank you.
And I'm sure everybody got a lot from this talk. And I also want to thank everyone who was present today for their very spirited participation throughout. It was very nice to see everybody being involved. And this brings us to the end of the first session of today. And we'll meet again in half an hour's time for Professor Rajesh Bhatt's lecture. So till then, bye. See you all later.
A lot of coffee now. Bye. Let me see the chats, because then I don't see.